So far during this pandemic, whenever the government has introduced new restrictions, the Labour Party has supported them. But will that continue? Well, Labour's Shadow Business Secretary Lucy Powell joins us now from Manchester. Thank you for being with us, Lucy Powell. So the Prime Minister is expected to announce tomorrow that families will be able to meet up over Christmas. Is that a good idea?
Well, let's see what those plans are. But I think what we now need for the first time really in this pandemic is we need a lot more clarity. We need a blueprint, a route map to take us through from now through to next year, so that families know what they're supposed to be doing when, more importantly, or just as importantly, so that businesses can plan whether they are reopening, and if they are, under what terms, and how they can continue over the coming weeks. And there are still many businesses who, despite the briefings in the papers today, won't know whether they can now stock up on food, whether they can start taking bookings again, whether they can plan to reopen their businesses. So we need methodical, measured clarity, not what we've seen before, which is over-briefing, then pulling back the drawbridge at the last minute, mixed messages, stay at home, go to work, stay at home, go to work. We need this now to be a route map through to next year, when hopefully the vaccine and mass testing will come on stream and make things easier for all of us.
So you say you want a route map, but that's what we're going to get tomorrow, isn't it? We're going to find out what the plan is for Christmas. We're going to find out what the tier system is going to be that's going to replace the national lockdown in England. And then on Thursday, we'll find out, after the data comes in, who's going into what tier. The question was about Christmas. Public Health England has said that for every day that restrictions are relaxed over Christmas, we'll have to pay for it with 5 days of increased restrictions. So what's Labour's position? Should restrictions be relaxed over Christmas?
Well, look, I think we all want to be able to see our families in some way over Christmas, but we don't want to do that in a way that we then have to pay a heavy price in the following weeks. I think what we want is measured clarity, so that we can, yes, see our families in some small way. I think we all recognise that Christmas is going to be a very different kind of Christmas this year. But it's not just about Christmas, it is about the coming weeks and the weeks after Christmas as well. And that's why we need this clear route map, instead of, what we get from the government is just sort of focusing on one small aspect, which then gets over-briefed and overplayed, and then they have to pull back the drawbridge at the last minute. And you say we'll find out all these things this week. I don't know whether we will, and what criteria the government is going to be using for that. Because if you're a hairdresser's in Harlow this morning, or a restaurant in Manchester, or a bar in Newcastle, or a brewery in Middlesbrough, you don't know whether you can start to restock, whether you can start to brew the beer, whether you can start to take the bookings. And if you're in the events industry, or the weddings industry, or aviation, will your businesses be able to begin to start working and operating again? And these are businesses that are now absolutely on their knees after many months of real difficulty, of mixed messages, of changing guidelines, of changing measures. And really now, this whole point of this national lockdown was to have a reset moment, if you like. And I worry that we've lost 2 weeks of that now, with the psychodramas going on in Number 10 and the infighting in government. They could have used this time much better to make it really clear to people what are going to be the criteria to go into what tier, what measures will be in those tiers, and how we can all have a route map from here through to next year.
OK, I'm still not totally clear, I'll be honest, what Labour's position is on Christmas, but we should move on to the spending review, of course, which we're expecting will be dominated by the pretty dire state of the public finances. Some really difficult decisions for the Chancellor to make. We're expecting him to potentially announce a freeze on public sector pay. Given the state of the finances, given the fact that UK debt is now bigger than GDP, are these kind of measures something that the Chancellor needs to consider?
Well, I don't think he does need to consider that at this point in time, because actually, at this point in time, when we're in the middle of a crisis, we're not even vaguely in the recovery phase yet. When you're in the middle of a crisis, you can't cut your way out of that crisis. And you can't really do that when you're at the beginnings of the recovery either, because you'll choke off the recovery in people stopping going out and spending their money and helping getting the economy going. So what we've got to remember about the context of this comprehensive spending review is that we are in a much worse position than many of our other counterparts in terms of countries and economies. We've seen the biggest drop in GDP of all of our European competitors, and we're in a much worse position because the government's constant sort of playing catch up and coming to the table too late with support packages and measures. And frankly, a lot of what they're bringing forward doesn't meet the scale of the challenge that we face. So we're in a worse position. And economically, it would be the wrong thing to do to cut back the public finances just at this point in time. But of course, it would be morally absolutely a kick in the teeth, wouldn't it, for all those frontline workers who've helped support us through this pandemic, from the bin collectors to those working in public health, in the mortuaries, the firefighters and so on. This would be an absolute kick in the teeth for them after what has been a horrendous few months and will still be a difficult few months to come.
Well, we'll put some of that to the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, when he's on the programme later on this morning. We're getting to crunch point, finally, should we say, on Brexit. Now, of course, I know that there's still some key decisions to be ironed out, particularly on fishing and level playing field, but at the same time, we know really the direction, at least, of where this trade deal is going. And it's going to come down to being a choice between quite a basic free trade deal or no deal. So what is Labour's position? Are you inclined to support the trade deal when it comes back to the House of Commons?
Well, we've always said that we want there to be a deal. That is our starting point. We have now left the EU, so the arguments about leave and remain are over. We're now coming to the end. We're very near the end of the transition arrangement, and the very best situation that we could get for this country in that context is a trade deal, is a deal with the EU. Yeah, we would like that to be as comprehensive a deal as possible so that businesses and jobs can be protected in this deeply uncertain time. The last thing businesses need right now is all the uncertainty.
So just to be clear then, you're inclined to support a trade deal?
We'll see the detail when it comes, but our starting point is that we want a deal. Okay. So that would definitely be our starting point.
OK. Now, Priti Patel has apologised after an official report found she breached the ministerial code and her behaviour amounted to bullying. Should she resign?
I think her position is completely untenable, absolutely. She's been found by an independent inquiry of breaking the ministerial code. And I think if you are found of breaking the ministerial code, your position is completely untenable. And I think it's appalling that the Prime Minister has decided to back her instead of sacking her. And that's what he should have done.
And just to follow up on that, last year, Luciana Berger left the Labour Party because of what she described as a culture of bullying, bigotry and intimidation. Tom Watson said that she was bullied out of her own party by racist thugs. So is Labour only tough on bullying when it's the Conservatives?
Not at all. I think, look, bullying doesn't know party political lines, and I think we can all be found wanting when that comes. And certainly the behaviour that Luciana was subject to was appalling. It was gross. It was grotesque. And that's why Keir Starmer has been very clear that rooting out anti-Semitism and taking a tough line on those who are anti-Semitic, or indeed those who are acting in a bullying way, won't have a place in the Labour Party. And he's very clear that he would have sacked Priti Patel or any other Labour MP who'd been found wanting in that way. So it's not that bullying can't exist in all political parties. Of course it can, and it does. Believe me, it does. It's how you deal with it, it's how you tackle it, and it's whether you show the leadership and the tough decisions that you need to take to root it out.
Talking about leadership and tough decisions, Jeremy Corbyn's been suspended from Labour after his reaction to a report on anti-Semitism in the party. Just a very brief answer, because we are running out of time, but should Jeremy Corbyn be a Labour MP?
Well, look, Keir has taken the very clear decision to remove the whip from Jeremy. That's his right as leader, because he was not happy with the response that Jeremy gave in reaction to the very damning EHRC report recently. So I think as a very first step, Jeremy Corbyn should apologise for that reaction, and hopefully then we can all move on from this saga.
OK. Lucy Powell, thank you very much for being on the programme. Thank you.
Thank you.